Mr. Scow, our MLA, our first delegation. So, Mr. Scow, if you want to come on up to the podium, you can take your mask off, which I would if I were you.
I certainly will.
How are you feeling? Welcome.
Mentally or physically?
Physically.
You know, I am doing well. And I just do want to start off by saying thank you to everyone here in Council and Mayor for accommodating my personal physical circumstances. You know, it certainly wasn't the best day of my life, but I survived, and I'm standing before you and grateful for that. Angels were certainly looking out for me, and I believe in that. I know it was a meeting that we had scheduled for some time, so thank you for accommodating that and for making time for me to come in today. I'm very happy to be here.
So, Joseph, I believe Jeff's given you all the background or information on the items that we wanted to talk about today. We want to talk about provincial policing, coal mining regulations, and COVID-19 restrictions.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess we'll start with policing.
Yes. So what would you like to know in particular about policing? Because while I know there are a lot of questions about it, given that we're doing a study of a feasibility study of a provincial police department, I don't know if I have a lot of answers for you. That's the issue. So yeah.
Councillor Bengry has a question for you.
Mr. Scow, I've been following this pretty close. And I understand that our minister, our Solicitor General, Casey DeBooth, is lacking a little bit of consultation with the rural communities. Is that a fair statement?
You know, I have not been involved in the consultation process directly. If you feel as though you have not been consulted on matters regarding provincial policing, that is something that you'd have to bring up to me, because I have not. People will always tell us as a government that we didn't consult enough. I'm terribly sort of rude. That they haven't been consulted, and that does happen. But as your representative, it's my job to be here and do that. So I couldn't speak to whether or not. But if that's your opinion, then I'm certainly happy to relay that to the minister.
We have our AUMA representative, Tanya Thorne.
Okay.
But I think at the same token, we need to consult actually with the communities 5,000 and under. And the reason why I say that is the 5,000 threshold per capita meant that we did not cover our police costs, our CMP costs. We covered CPO, but that was over and above. Now we're downloading our CMP costs onto the 5,000 and under communities, and in our particular community, we have no industry taxes, so our police costs are going to be a big portion of our budget. And so we need to really concentrate, and the Office of the Solicitor General needs to have a look at very seriously at that funding process and what's going to happen to these small communities such as ours.
Okay. So just to understand, just to read my notes back to you, because I'm taking notes, not surfing Facebook or texting. I do have horrible handwriting. I think I said that before. But you're just suggesting that these costs will be downloaded onto you, and that's going to be a problem because it's a significant portion of the budget. Yes. Understood.
Emily, Scout, that goes a little bit in the same kind of line. When we had our last AUMA kind of convention just a few weeks ago, we heard about the different way the government went about to try to get the study together. The issues that we heard from the RCMP was that the representation of the whole of the province is not reflected in that study that is made, and that it was very much lacking representation from smaller towns, from those who really needed to have also a voice. So they did a survey themselves, and apparently was given to Minister Madhu. And so I really think that it needs to kind of be part of the balancing act when there are recommendations that are coming down the pipeline and we didn't get to have a chance to have a say. Then I think the document that you're going to have is based maybe on surveys that were done but not representative of the provincial voice on the whole. So that's my concern.
So you're saying, just to repeat back to you, that there's a concern that the study being done isn't representative of smaller towns.
Right.
Maybe of the whole of Alberta's voice regarding policing in general.
Well, I have heard that there's concerns about consultation all the time with regards to small towns being consulted. Most of the major centers have their own police force. So you're talking Medicine Hat, Uxbridge, Calgary, Edmonton, etc. I think even Red Deer has their own police force. So this really is a consultation with the smaller towns. What I suspect you're saying, we don't like the words you meant, if I understand it, Cardston, you're saying has not been consulted on this.
But I think other little towns have not either.
Yeah, and I guess the balance here is we do need to do this study in a timely manner, but we also need to consult as many people in towns as possible. So hoping to get to as many as possible, that would be the endeavor. But there are a lot of small towns, municipalities with the province. So I'll have to look into it and find out exactly what the process was for consulting small communities in rural Alberta. But I couldn't speak to a lot more than that.
I really, if you don't mind me, I really think to look at the RCMP report and what they did in their consultation and compare it to what's in your report to come might show what we're talking about a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe have a look in that light. It might explain a lot.
Yes.
Barnes, Councillor
So,
Bengry.
I'm on the Southwest Economic Alliance, and I asked this question. We have 16 member communities. Not one of them said they were consulted. And that's a real big concern to me. So Cardston and 15 other communities in the south didn't receive any, consultation requests on that. And one thing that really kind of hurts and bothers me, Joseph, is when we sit down and we get the lowdown on the MSI funding, and we're cutting back 25 or 30%, and we have infrastructure that we're struggling to be able to afford to do, and then we get this thrown at us. Where's all this money coming from? I don't know how many communities are just going to say, well, we can't afford policing. You'd hate to throw that at them, but where are they going to get the money to pay? Because I know these are the other communities saying, hey, we just don't have the money. We have to get rid of other services, and our people are upset because now we're not going to have the services that we, like our water and our sewer and all those things that need to be constantly fixed up. And where do we get this money from? It's downloaded to us. We don't have that kind of money. And I understand the plight of the province because they're getting cut back on oil money too. But there has to be something done because you're right. It should have been a rural consultation, but I'm representing 16 communities with my comments that never got that. I don't know what it's like at the Southwest or the South Grove. Councillor Selk is on that group, and a whole bunch of other communities. Were they consulted?
A lot of them now.
Yeah. There you go.
Well, thank you for that, Councillor Barnes. And I certainly understand your frustration, and this is something that I will have to consult the minister on and ask what the process was for consultation. I do know that this is part of the Fair Deal panel, which made a lot of recommendations, not the least of which was establishing an Alberta Provincial Police Department. There is no question that it's going to cost some money, but it's also incumbent upon us to explore that. Now, the method by which we explore it is now kind of in question, so I have to get back to you as to why the rural Albertan communities were in the southern portion of the province were consulted. I did make a promise when I was elected, and before I was elected, I would ensure the South is heard. And it sounds to me like when it comes to rural policing, the South is not being heard. And that's certainly frustrating. I understand why you're frustrated, so I will certainly come back to you on that.
Thank you.
Councillor Bengry?
Mr. Scal, just for information purposes, the AMA President Summit on Policing was part 2, February 17th, and what they brought out is Price Waterhouse has been the people to do the transition study from RCMP to the provincial police. And so I think it's to your advantage and to our advantage that we have a look at that Price Waterhouse study very, very closely. Are they taking in all the costs? And also the Blood Tribe Police will maintain their police costs from federal government. You know, they're being paid 100% of policing costs by the federal government, where the federal government is paying 30% of policing, and Alberta pays 70%. So we need to look at those costs really close, and I think Price Waterhouse is not doing what they're being paid for. That's my own opinion.
So, support?
Yeah, just a couple of just information. Red Deer does use the RCMP for their city police. Since we're going to be paying an extra, what, $270,000 a year, whatever it is, close to 10% of our budget, when will we know if we're going to see one single boot on the ground here for that extra money we're paying? Is there any way of finding that out if we're ever going to see any extra RCMP for the money?
That's on the rural policing initiative.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it is.
Yeah, that's what you're referring to.
Okay, so that's not regarding the provincial police.
Right.
You know, I know that the police are coming in, we're all sharing the costs on that, and we've been asked by Albertans to increase boots in the ground because we do have a real crime problem. In terms of distribution, it's being based on need. So I think that while I understand that Cardston always has needs for policing, and there's just never enough to go around, how it's distributed, I don't have any immediate information on that.
So, Joseph, if I might, put all this in context, obviously all the communities that were below 5,000 that weren't paying policing costs before were kind of caught off guard by this, and we knew that it was AUMA who put the resolution forward and was passed. And I think a number of communities, including ourselves, were opposed to that resolution. Now, having said that, we've already started paying. And our concern, obviously, is that whether you stay with the RCMP or whether you go with the provincial police force, it's going to be costly because the RCMP are expecting a wage increase because they are the lowest paid police force in the country. So I think you can anticipate that when they settle their contract, it's going to be retroactive. I'm assuming those costs are going to be then downloaded on the municipalities. So it's not just what we've already received, it's what we're going to receive. Then they're also re-outfitting the RCMP. So guns, new uniforms, new this, new that, new cruisers, blah, blah, blah. That also is probably going to be downloaded on municipalities. So that's another level of extra funding that we got to come up with. So all those things have concerns, and then you're talking about a provincial police force, and I guess we would like to know, why are you so intent on creating a provincial police force?
With regards to the cost, is that confirmed that the cost of the new outfitting and vehicles and infrastructure is going to be downloaded to the municipalities? I ask because I hate to venture so far as to speculate as to how that cost will be distributed. I'm just from my own edification curious.
Tanya Thorne, who's our representative on AMA, sits on the board, and that's where I'm getting the information from. Her indication is that those are going to be costs that are passed through. The province isn't going to grab them, and these are the feds, so that leaves us.
Okay, with regards to your second question, I guess the main question, which is why are we pursuing it? It's simple, Albertans asked us to. This was something that we toured the province with the Fair Deal panel, and I attended a couple of those meetings as well, investigating what Albertans want to ensure that Alberta gets a fair deal from Ottawa. Really, the message was pretty clear: more Alberta, less Ottawa, and part of that was an Alberta provincial police force. I think if you recall, there's been some instances recently where RCMP was called in to effectively monitor situations that were not being resolved, and I think there was a belief that we had, and it was true, that we had no control over what the RCMP was doing. One case in point would be the recent blockade of Unifor members of Carway fuel station. So, the RCMP was there, I went there, they were there watching it, and these Unifor members were effectively executing a legal blockade, and nothing was really being done about it without a court order. So, I think the belief is that Ottawa is not taking concerns of Alberta seriously, and part of that is the way the RCMP is being operated. Now, I have to say, I have met and worked with the RCMP here in Cardston and throughout Cardston 6, and I think they're fabulous individuals who do a tremendous job. And I would never cast aspersions on the work that they do. But I also understand that Albertans have asked us to explore the feasibility of a provincial police force. And if we don't do that, then we're not doing our jobs. I'm not doing my job.
That's fair. The only thing I would add to that, though, is, as was alluded to earlier, you can have a provincial police force, and that's great, and it will be in the interests of Alberta, but then you take out the 30% share that goes into the police funding from the feds, and who's paying for that? The province all by itself. Now, my sense is that the province isn't going to want to take on all that expense by themselves, so they will download more onto the municipalities.
Well, and this is why we're presenting Albertans with all the facts. We know that this is not going to be an easy transition. PricewaterhouseCoopers is exploring all the pieces of a transition. I suspect that would include the purchase of materials, buildings, vehicles, everything that you need. And then, of course, you have the HR portion where you'd be hiring members. I suspect some of them would be coming from the RCMP. I can't say for sure, of course. Transition of pensions, all that kind of stuff. So it certainly isn't just let's put an Alberta police force together and we're good to go. This is a significant move by the province. I do know that other provinces do this, though. They do it well. Ontario, for one, they have their own provincial police force. So we are going to be presenting Albertans with all the facts, the cost, the time that it will take to transition if it moves forward, for lack of a better term. But at the moment, this study is going on, and we will present Albertans with those facts when it's complete.
Mayor Kronen?
I just would ask something that was given to us at the end of AUMA. There was a poll that was done. There were about 659 people at that conference. And they were asked a question: if you had to choose between a provincial police or the RCMP, as imperfect as it might be, what would you do? Mm-hmm. And 81% was for keeping the RCMP. 19% were to have a provincial police. That's just a poll. It's not a true poll because many were of the similar community, so I don't know how many towns are represented with that. Mm-hmm. But it would be worthwhile to get a sense of all the communities in Alberta in the light of that document, if it's really what they want.
I think it's an excellent point. With regards to the poll, you are polling like-minded individuals who sit on councils and who deal day to day with the numbers.
Exactly.
And the fiscal realities of your own government expenses. So, you're going to see this from a different light than Joe Citizen, who is just sick and tired of feeling Ottawa's meddling in Alberta. I, Joe Citizen, if I can continue with the pun, and sick and tired of Ottawa meddling with Alberta. I also recognize that we as a province have fiscal realities we're facing as well. And that includes reacting and dealing with COVID in the previous year, this year, and probably for a couple of years to come. So these are not lost on me. They're not lost on the Premier and Cabinet and my caucus colleagues. But again, you know, I do have to revert back to what Albertans asked us to do, which was explore the option and present them with all the facts.
Fair enough.
Fair enough. I think we basically told you our concerns, and that's whatever avenue you pursue. I think we're at the point where we're going to have to say uncle if you're going to be downloading more costs for policing than we already have.
Well, and like I said, I'm not the Minister of Finance, I'm not the Minister of Justice, I'm not a Minister of anything. But what I am is a local representative who does recognize your fiscal realities, that there are just, in these times, there's less money going around. So I would hope that before any final decisions are made, we have a meeting just like this again, where we can chat about, you know, exactly what this means for Cardston, if there's a cost sharing model with the province and the towns, right? Because, you know, this is a huge move. It's not lost on me.
If we're done with policing, we'll move on to the next item then. And you have the letter there that was presented to all the municipalities by Mayor Blair Painter from the municipality of Brothers House. And he's basically advocating for the coal mine that they're looking to do, the Grassy Mountain coal mine. And he's asking for support. You know, I think, and my colleagues will correct me if I'm wrong, but primarily we're in support of what Mayor Painter is saying. This isn't just jobs and job creation for those in the Kronen past. That extends all the way down to our communities and others. So what he said in there, I think we would give him 2 thumbs up on that. I think that's pretty much all I want to say on that, isn't it?
Okay. Yeah, there was a lot of pushback with the coal policy. I do understand that. And there's a lot of concern specifically about the health and safety of agriculture moving forward. I will say at a very high level that the government is investing nearly $1 billion in infrastructure, in irrigation infrastructure here in Southern Alberta. I don't like it when governments say, we're investing in this and investing in that, and truly you're just spending, right? But irrigation is a form of an investment that I think the latest statistic I heard had a 3-to-1 return on investment, where it's real money coming back to the province, it's real jobs being created, it's value added, it's value added, it's a healthier infrastructure and it's a healthier crop. And so we would not be jeopardizing that kind of an investment if we, with what would be considered by some as a foolhardy move with coal. That is not the intention. The intention is to ensure that we support industries coming to Alberta. We let them know that Alberta is open for business. And we're going to do it in a safe and constructive and respectful manner. There was a lot of fear going on around the coal policy, suggesting that we were going to poison the water with selenium. In fact, I shouldn't even repeat some of these slanderous things that people are saying, because we are working with the federal government, we're working with the Ministry of the Department to ensure that if there's going to be coal mines going in Alberta, that they're going to be done safely. And I've had constituents tell me, well, it's impossible. I disagree. I have a ton of constituents who live right here in Cardston, who drive every week to feed their families working in the coal industry. These are amazing people. I'm related to a lot of them, most of the town actually. You can't be a scout and not really love people from town. Anyways, and they've talked to me and said, we do it safely. The facts aren't being distributed. So what the government's doing in coal policy, and I'll end on this, is we're doing public consultation, going back to the drawing board on the coal policy to ensure the message is clear, Alberta's open for business in a safe and respectful manner.
I would just ask these people that are against it, why is it okay across the border in BC where they're doing okay, but this will become in Alberta, it's not okay? That's what I would ask the people that are against this coal mine. And it's not the regular coal we're talking about, it's the high level coking coal.
Yes, absolutely, it's metallurgical coal, we're not talking about, if I could use an analogy, a 12-year-old kid shoveling coal into a coal-fired generator or coal-fired furnace, right? This is far more, it's different, it's significantly different, and it's essential. And I've done some research on the ability to produce steel without metallurgical coal, and it is very costly and has not been proven to be a viable business model at the time. And I'm the first one to say that if it becomes viable and the private sector is going to invest in it and it's going to make the money, I'm all for it. But the reality is that right now, and for the foreseeable future, we need metallurgical coal, and I support respectful and responsible mining for it.
Because I think that echoes what we determine as our own council. And the third item that we brought to your attention was a letter from the Cardston County requesting a regional approach to COVID-19 restrictions. I believe, Mr. Scow, that you have been a proponent of that as well. I may be mistaken, but it's not necessarily fair to stroke the same brush across all of Southern Alberta with the COVID restrictions, that we don't have the same number of cases, we don't have the same issues that they have in Calgary or Edmonton, so we shouldn't be painted with the same brush. And that's kind of what the Cardston County is alluding to. And we've also sent a letter to the Premier saying there needs to be a measured approach to COVID restrictions and reopening.
Yeah, you're certainly correct. I am certainly tired of COVID. I know everybody in the province is. And we implemented the 4-step program with the intent of monitoring by hospitalizations, because that is the ultimate metric that we're really concerned about. If we recall back in late October, we had about 100 people in hospitals, and that was manageable. And within about 5 weeks, we went to 600. So we saw what was going to be the kind of the early phases of exponential growth. And our concern is the number of hospital beds with respect to what we have to attend to those beds. A lot of healthcare workers were getting sick and unable to come in. So we were, potentially looking at, if things got really bad, bringing in the Army Reserves and bringing in 10 hospitals. Luckily, we were able to avoid that by bending the curve and implemented the STEP program. The problem that it has is people don't like talking. Sorry, let me back up. You can't measure hospitalizations very well on a regional basis, because if you get really sick with COVID, you're probably going to end up in Calgary or the closest major hospital. And a friend of mine is a nurse in Lethbridge Hospital, and a couple weeks ago they had the highest number of patients for COVID there recently since March. So, we don't want to overrun the healthcare system, but it is hard to put a regional approach on hospital numbers. And the reason why we did that is people kept telling us, well, you're measuring this by COVID cases. But I suspect everyone in this room may know of someone or related to someone, or maybe even had COVID. And there's a really good chance that they recovered from it. So it's not a great metric by just saying COVID cases alone. But that's the only way you can measure it by a regional approach, is saying this region has X number of COVID cases on a per 100,000 basis. This is acceptable, this is too high. But people ask us not to use that metric. So we moved to hospitalizations, which is a very difficult metric to use if you're going to go regional. But your point is well made. I do understand that we are not Calgary, we're not Grand Prairie, we're not Peace River. And it's such a difficult balance to find how we monitor this and address the issue of COVID and the patients who are having very severe symptoms versus those who aren't having symptoms or having mild symptoms. And it's, I'll end on this. I understand your frustration, and I don't really have a great answer for you besides at the moment, we have 262 hospitalizations as of today around 4 o'clock. And that puts us en route to going towards the next steps.
Councillor Brown, you have a question?
I think there's no good guy with COVID, right? Everyone's angry about it all the time. But something you alluded to earlier, you said Alberta is open for business. It's not though, right? We're seeing that it's not. We still have so many businesses that are struggling so badly because of all the restrictions. It feels like we're restricted to death a little bit. And so just pass that along, that we're frustrated because we are not open for business. And if we're not open for business, then families are struggling. And who is it to say what is an essential service? My job's important, your job's important. Everybody, you know what I mean? As long as we're putting a roof over somebody's head, we're essential.
I appreciate your comments, Councillor Brown, and they're well made. We did jettison the essential, non-essential classification a while ago. In fact, we actually apologized for that. The Premier openly apologized for making that clarification. Every person's business is essential to them. Full stop. There are some businesses that have a higher rate of transmission just by virtue of the kind of business it is. But what I would push back a little bit is, if anyone in this room can name me a business besides theaters and banquet halls that are closed, I'm happy to entertain that. But the answer is there's not. And in addition to making sure Alberta is open for business, we have looked at other jurisdictions, and you look at places like Manitoba that has certain miles of the grocery store that are blocked off. You look at Quebec that had a curfew. You look at Ontario where churches were locked. We recognized very early on that there were a number of fundamental freedoms that we just could not infringe upon. And one in particular was the freedom of religion. And so as we looked at the new approach since kind of in the last 6 months, we realized that there's a safe way to go to church. There's a safe way to have businesses open, because businesses are great at monitoring people coming into their stores. I look at Councillor Drew, you have a flower shop. And, I suspect that as all this came in, you were taking the appropriate measures in your store to ensure you were still open. And your business is essential to you and your family. So I do challenge members of this council. If there is a business that's not open, I'm happy to hear it. But I have heard from a lot of business owners that the decline in clientele is actually, it's just the purchasing behavior of people at the time. People are less inclined to go out and buy certain products. They're worried about it, but it's not because we've said you can't. That is the one thing we've done. We have not said you can't be open unless you are, a high rate of transmission or a large gathering type facility. And as of yesterday, we opened up gyms and libraries.
Yes.
You have a follow-up comment?
So gyms are open. If there's clarification, I'm happy to give it, but this has been when there has been some confusion. Gyms are open. High intensity workouts would be considered something where you're losing your breath. But again, that is subject to interpretation of the gym owner. But gyms are open.
You just made a comment on that, and they are open, but under severe restrictions in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
So many you can't get whatever. Basketball is kind of the joke, because all you can do is have so many kids, you can't be against another team or anything else.
I'm talking about workout gyms. I'm talking about workout gyms.
Right. Yeah, I get that too. Well, my concern, I guess, and what bothers me every day is the Premier gets on TV every day and all this COVID. We've got all kinds of problems with opioid overdoses going on right now. We've got all kinds of problems, mental health issues because of COVID and closing things that are closed up. We've got all kinds of problems with outside of COVID we never seem to hear of. It's like the Premier has hooked his lot in life onto the COVID chain, and hopefully that works for him. But the rest of Alberta, I see a meme all the time that says, is there any other disease besides COVID anymore? Are they all gone? There's no flu, there's no this, there's no that. So the concern, I think, of a lot of Albertans is all we ever hear about from the Premier is COVID and then nothing else.
I appreciate your comments, Councillor Court. I would respectfully disagree. I know that we've invested over $500 million in mental health. In fact, there's a youth center right here in town that got a substantial grant from the government to help support youth here in town with mental health concerns. We've also invested a lot of money in expanding the treatment center on Blood Reserve, opioid addictions. We take that very seriously, which is why we did an audit of the injection site, the free injection site downtown Lethbridge, which has since been closed. So mental health is not lost on us. We've invested a lot of money in mental health. I do know that every day there's a new announcement, and it's always COVID-centric, because that's what the media decides to go with. But this government takes very seriously the mental health. We had some very serious concerns recently in Medicine Hat that the minister himself went down to help address, because this is going to have lasting effects on people, whether it's financial, physical, or emotional, mental, and we are absolutely dealing with those as much as possible and putting a significant amount of resources behind that. So if you're not hearing about it, I can go and dig up the articles, the announcements, and forward them on to council, but we absolutely take those concerns very seriously and put our money where our words are.
Mr. Scott, I just want to back up a little bit, because you said that the restrictions are eased and it's based upon hospitalizations. I find it interesting because the hospitalizations, particularly in the ICU, are less in 2020 than they were in 2019, 2018, 2017. So statistically, that doesn't make any sense.
Yes, no, I understand.
So if the hospitalizations are less last year than they were the previous year, and the year before that, then your suggestion that it's based on hospitalizations is probably, there's some flaws to that.
I wouldn't say flaws so much as speculation. When you're looking at exponential growth of this virus, particularly with what could be new variants, if you're going along a trajectory that is going to put you in a very bad spot, you have to nip it in the bud as soon as possible. And that's what was happening to us back in early December. So yes, I think we reached a maximum of 900 hospitalizations, and for the life of me, can't remember our capacity. I think it's it's over 2,000. But going along those lines, if you're talking about doubling every so number of days, then you will hit a place where you do not have capacity. So while we never reached that, that's a good thing. It's because we did take measures to ensure we didn't get there. But if we didn't take any steps, you would have seen the reserves come in, you would have seen the Butter Dome occupied with emergency hospitals, with emergency beds, and it would have been a very big problem for our province.
Councillor Court, did you have a comment? Or?
No, I'm done.
Okay. Your comment?
I just want to go back to the statement you just made a few minutes ago. You talked about an investment of $5 million towards the youth.
$500 million. And my number could be wrong in that, but I remember being quite substantial.
Can you tell me what it is exactly?
Epic Youth got a grant from the government, a pretty substantial grant from the government to help support mental health in this community.
Thank you. That's good news.
Yeah, I actually pushed very hard for that grant. I brought down the Minister of Community Social Services to tour Epic and see the facility, and I constantly work with Minister Jason Lewan and his Chief of Staff, Marshall Smith, to discuss the concerns about opioid addictions and mental health, particularly in Cardston Siksik, as we do have the two largest land mass reserves in the country. And but outside of the reserves, in addition to the reserves, there's a lot of mental health needs, and Epic does tremendous work in this community. I know Gerry and Sarah pretty personally, and I talk to them often about their needs, and I don't take credit for things. They're the ones who applied for the grant, but when I encourage them to apply for it, encourage them that this was an absolutely worthy cause, and I encourage the government that if they're looking at noble causes within Cardston Siksik, Epic was certainly one that they should give a good look at.
So, you see, communication is unfortunately a sad thing. So we hear about that today, but had no clue.
It was on social media. They did a big.
Yeah, but it never came to council, no.
Reporting, they've never done.
And you know what, I'm happy to wear that I didn't communicate that with council.
We rejoice.
Not looking for sympathy, but I am trying. I have a lot of
No,
towns and leagues, and
No
mayors,
problem.
councils. I care deeply for this community. I live here. I worked with a lot of you, I knew you a lot before I was elected, and so, it is a sense of personal pride that I live here and that I represent this area and commonly referred to as God's country when I'm in the legislature, because I truly believe it is. It is a special chosen place, and I'll do whatever I can for it, but I do apologize if I haven't communicated enough.
It's not so much the apology. We would have loved to rejoice with you for the community.
Mhm.
That's more, we would have loved to have a good release in a local paper or something. Social media is good for those who use it, but I think it's a worthy cause for youth. I mean, I applaud you for that. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, and you didn't hear it from me, I'll be honest with you, you didn't hear it from me because I'm trying not to talk about it. I don't, if I'm down there shooting a photo with Jeremy and Sarah Preet with a check for a bunch of money, I think it takes away, maybe I'm not the greatest politician, with the self-promotion side of things, but I didn't want to be out there tooting my own horn. But, and so this is why, again, I could probably do a better job of this, but I'm not great with those kinds of events because I want it to be about Epic or whatever other community is doing tremendous work and have earned a grant or other kinds of support.
Just to add a little bit, it's important for communities to know that the government has not forsaken us. And so that
Never.
is a
Never.
way,
Not on my watch.
that is a way for us to kind of rejoice together as a town.
I think you make a great point, Mayor, and it's not lost on me, and I'll do better.
No? I'm happy.
Excellent. That's
No other questions or comments? Jeff?
Can I just throw one off script for you, Joseph?
Sure.
that's great.
I just want some advice. Council's been involved in this. 3 years ago, the mayor and I met with some bureaucrats from Alberta Energy on our renewable power center project
Yes.
we looked at. And then 2 years ago, you met with the mayor and I with the chief of staff of Energy. And I know Energy had a total revamp as a department and changed dramatically. I've CC'd you in some emails to the chief of staff trying to re-engage. Unfortunately, we got the same response as we have in the past, that this is tricky, so we go really quiet.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like some advice on how we get back to the table. We haven't even been told no, we just
Yeah.
haven't been told anything. And it's really frustrating
Yeah.
to just, when the phone just goes quiet, I can't get anyone to call me back, I can't get any response.
Yeah, I'm going to give you probably the simplest advice is the squeaky wheel gets the grease. And so put on a pair of heavy boots and kick me in the backside, and I'll
Okay.
just kind of get back at it. There's a lot of balls to juggle, and that's no excuse.
Yeah.
I have a
Yeah.
tremendous staff here in Cardston and Paddy Plain, and I'm not to sell you, but everyone's pad is awesome. But yeah, just you have my number. Just keep texting me, and again, I do take a lot of responsibility between managing a lot of the COVID stuff and just kind of getting out there. So it's not for lack of interest. It's just I haven't been on it. So I will be. Let's work together on that.
I'll send you a message.
Absolutely.
Good. Anything else from the rest of the council? If not,
Just a thought, just an observation, and I look at the numbers of grandparents out there, like myself, all their kids that don't live at home, all our grandkids are, all over the place. But yet, all the school kids get to go to school, get to see their friends, and get to do things. The grandma, grandpa, and the kids who want to see grandma, grandpa don't get to see grandma, grandpa unless we have social media. It's really frustrating. I think, and we have tried to stay, we have stayed within the rules and regulations, but I know dozens of people who have gone to a large city and got a hotel and have their kids come and have dinner with them and go around it. They work their way around it, and it's a sneaky way to get to see your family. But I just don't get it that parents can't see their kids or go and visit their kids, and yet the kids get to go to school and get to go to their activities and stuff. It doesn't sit with me at all, and it's very difficult.
Yeah.
It's okay for families that got kids at home,
Yeah.
But when your kids are out there and you want to see your kids, and that's your life,
Yeah,
you know?
I can't even imagine. You know,
Yeah,
I
it's
have
not easy.
parents,
That's an
that
observation.
medicine hat, and you know, they love to come down here and visit with us before all this stuff happened, and take the kids and take them fishing in waters and all those kinds of things, and
Yeah.
that's all on the plan when this is all done. But we're all experiencing and having difficulties with this in different ways, and that is one that really hurts, really stings. And though I know how important it is to have the physical distancing and respect the public health orders, it is hard. So I'm sorry, you know, that you're going through that, Councillor Barnes, as so many others are.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I'm just praying, genuinely and fervently praying that we can get through this. But I do want to say this. I am hopeful. I am hopeful. We have had the best vaccine rollout of any province by a country mile in this country. And prior to the Prime Minister botching the procurement process, we were en route to having a lot of people in this province vaccinated 2 times, which is what you need. It has really hurt us. You know, the common phrase we're hearing is no vaccine, no freedom. And that's the reality. But the majority of the hospitalizations we're seeing in this province are 60 plus. I mean, the vast majority are 60 plus.
Mm-hmm.
And I suspect that if things continue to go in the pace we're going, we can increase the vaccine procurement process. We could see the 60 plus population vaccinated very shortly in this province, in a very short period of time, which ultimately means fewer hospitalizations and fewer people that are, you know, fewer restrictions. So this government is so committed to getting that done. The Premier is so fired up about this to make sure that once we have those vaccines, they're getting to people as fast as possible. And I'm proud to be part of a member of the caucus, the government caucus that is doing that. But it is hurting. It's hurting people so bad.
Yeah.
And I look around this community, and you have young families like mine, and you have older couples who have grandkids across the street or across town and can't see them. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah, it is.
Councillor Barnes, you have a comment?
I was just gonna say, as a politician, it's super easy for people to, every time we see you, to say all the things you're not doing for us. But I would like to say thank you, because you are doing some great things for our community, and we appreciate it. And
Thank you.
I feel like we don't get that. So thank you. We do appreciate, we know it's hard, especially with COVID and all the ungreatness that comes with that, but we do appreciate it, so thank you.
That means a lot, Councillor Brown.
Yes.
Thank you. I appreciate those comments. Every politician has their good days and their bad days, and municipal, federal, provincial, they're all different, but not a good time to be a provincial politician, but at the same time, I'm not curling up in a hole. I'm here to serve you, and I hope you know that. So thank you for noticing. That means a lot to me.
We do, thank you.
Thank you.
I would reiterate, I would add to what Councillor Brown said. That was the thought I had for your government too. Although we might not always appreciate everything that is coming down the pipe, we do appreciate the hard work that is being put by any politician of any party, because it takes a lot of courage, determination, and resilience to be a politician, especially right now. So thank you so much for what you do, for the way you trying to be a champion for our community. Thank you, we appreciate that. And thank you for taking the time to come to council at a time when you yourself are not doing so good. So we wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. And if I could throw it back at you, I know how hard your job is. You're very close to your constituents, far closer than I am, because you represent one town, I represent several. You have a very difficult job. It does not go unnoticed, and I love the fact that you're willing to have me here in person today to talk with you. I had a coach once say, it's when I stop yelling at you that you should be worried. It's not, when I'm yelling at you, it means I care and I'm engaging with you. So when I stop talking, you should be worried. And I've never had a coach stop talking to me, and I haven't had a council stop talking to me yet, so thank you for being on. It means a lot. So thank you again for all you do, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, Mr. Scow, and we won't stop yelling at you.
Sounds good. I always say, it's not how you say it, it's what you say. That's what I listen to. You're yelling, I get the message.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Heal quickly.
Thank you very much.
So, Glenda's, our third delegation is here on Zoom with me. Thanks, Joe. So if you want to give me just 1 minute, you can probably get, and she can get rolling now. Our second delegation isn't here. I checked
Okay,
downstairs,
good.
so
Thank you.
if we want to just
Let's
take,
move on.
if you'll just give me 1 minute, I'll see if Glenda and I can get the electronics sorted out here. One step at a time? Okay, good, we got that. Okay, Glenda, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. So this is a little unconventional, but you can see me, but they can all see you. So you have to look at my mug for the entire presentation. And not to be distracting, I'll shut my camera off, but you're up on the projector, and so all of council can see you just fine, they can hear you just fine. And I did set it so you could take over the screen. So if you're ready to go, we are happy to have your presentation.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, let's get you sharing. Does it say you can take it?
Yes, it's,
Okay.
you'll have to, just a moment.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, we usually have a camera that pans out over all of council, but it's not working. So I'm going to stop my video, and then you're way to go.
Can you see the presentation?
Yeah, we can see everything just fine.
Okay. And I should go ahead and start?
Yeah, you're good to go.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Council. I'm so pleased. I wish I could be there with you in person, but I'm so pleased to be able to at least bring you an update. We thank you very much for your support in the previous year, and we look forward to continuing to work very closely with your council. COVID-19 has changed all our lives. STARS is a physician-driven organization, and our #1 priority is to protect and maintain unimpacted operations. Are you able to see the COVID slide?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. STARS transport physicians are regarded as experts in the field of critical care, and the reasons why STARS was asked to participate in an international consortium to share learnings about COVID-19. We developed rigorous PPE and decontamination procedures and created an online portal system for rural healthcare professionals so they could access airway management, ventilation, and resuscitation procedures. These are stressful times, and we've seen a rise in stress-related types of missions like heart attack, stroke, drug overdose, and COVID-related. 13, and it's been as high as 18% of all of STARS missions have been suspected or confirmed COVID cases. During these challenging times, we recognize that our municipalities are facing countless hardships, and this is magnified by the fact that there are many who rely upon you for help, including STARS. Like all organizations, the pandemic has negatively impacted our revenues in all funding areas, including government. Last year's lottery did not sell out. The calendar campaign has decreased with the inability to travel or to have a presence in communities. Site registration revenue is considerably less with the uncertainty of the energy sector. And with COVID-19 still looming around us, most of STARS fundraising events have all been canceled for the unforeseeable future. But let's have a look at the positives and what STARS has done to be proactive. 2020 posed many challenges, yet we recognize that the STARS lottery is our single largest funding source for operations. So we moved forward with the 2021 lottery. We mobilized and worked diligently to identify operational as well as fundraising efficiencies. We pivoted our fundraising programs to online events. And we're grateful to many communities that reached out to us to host 50/50s and online raffles in place of their annual community fundraisers that could not be held. The 2021 lottery, the 50/50 has just sold out, and the main lottery is 99% sold. Deadline is March 18th, and we are humbled that Albertans continue to stand by STAR's side. When we look at the expenditure side on the right, increasing requests for STARS is reflected in a rise in the aviation expenditures, and the administration costs show a decrease, but we too suffered the heartache of having to downsize staff members across all 6 bases. Now let's have a look at a 5-year overview of missions. Overall, across the province, 2020 reflects increasing missions. Although this is not the case in your area, scene call occurrences have been affected in many areas due to much less travel. And we have seen an increase in interfacility transfers from rural hospitals, possibly attributed to additional pandemic cases. For example, at the Lethbridge Hospital, in 2020, IFTs or interfacility transfers have increased by approximately 20%, and there have already been 9 STARS missions flown from that hospital this year so far. We must also keep in mind that we all travel and commute, whether it's for work, recreation, and our regular daily schedules. So you can rest assured that your continued support with STARS safeguards that your residents and neighbors will have access to STARS not only in Alberta, but across Western Canada. When people think about STARS, the red helicopter comes to mind, yet STARS offers much more to communities like Cardston. From behind the scenes, the STARS emergency link provides an immediate safety network 24/7 through coordination and with access to all available resources. Regardless of the method of transport, the STARS physicians provide critical care oversight and guidance on all calls deemed critical, and they also support pre-hospital practitioners. They provide, they provide physician-to-physician consultation with rural hospital. They orchestrate the complex logistics and facilitate with the receiving hospitals, especially to coordinate time-sensitive requirements. The Emergency Link Center handles over 31,000 emergency requests each year. That's about an average of 86 requests per day. And much of the behind-the-scenes work involves our transport positions. The BK-117 Legacy Fleet has served STARS well for 35 years. But this new H145 is breakthrough technology. It has increased fuel efficiency, speed, and range. And with a unified fleet, it will increase safety and significantly reduce costs. Currently, we have 2 H145s operational from Calgary, which serves your town of Cardston, as well as 1 in Saskatoon, and a 3rd is providing backup. We received delivery of number 4 and 5, and now a new 5-bladed system was recently announced. So with increased lift and load capacity, so number 6 and 7 are going to be the new 5-bladed system, expected arrival in late fall of this year. All helicopters will be identically equipped, and the entire fleet should be completed in early 2022. Provincial and federal governments embrace the vision of having H145s across the province and across Western Canada, providing funding for 7 of the 9 in total. And then, of course, COVID-19 hit right in the middle of our capital campaign. To date, an additional $19 million has been raised from corporate, individual, and municipal gifts. There is a market for the aging BK-117 fleet. It will depend on market value and the rate of the US dollar later this year, but we are anticipating that the sale of the previous fleet could possibly generate approximately $15 million. And so our fleet campaign also continues. This is the new H145 most technologically advanced intensive care unit environment. When you combine exceptional critical care expertise provided by our crew, having blood on board, and with the STARS transport physicians working behind the scenes, together this results in STAR being able to bring the highest level of emergency critical care. An ultrasound is one of the most vital diagnostic tools. Previously, we have had ultrasound, but it was a bulky device and not easily transportable. But this new handheld ultrasound is a game changer for trauma and heart patients. With early detection, this valuable tool will help to avoid fatal outcomes. Together, we have saved countless lives. We thank you for the life-saving partnership that we shared. We're grateful to you for your support in 2020 of $1 per capita. Maintaining secure, reliable funding for STARS is challenging in the best of times, yet it is vital for us all as we move forward through the future. STARS is requested to assist communities with the pandemic, in addition to regular daily demands. So we count on our municipal supporters, very much so. I kindly ask your council to please consider maintaining your support of STARS with a contribution of $1 per capita for 2021. The most important time is now, and it is going to take us all working together. With you by our side, we will continue to save many lives. And I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Glenda. Just so you know, we're changing some cameras, so council, she can't hear you through your mic, so if there's any questions or anything, just tell me. I'll ask Glenda, and then you can see her on the screen. I was just playing around with some settings, actually. I can assure you that you're not just talking to me, there's council. So I can go to my rear camera and you can see them, but, so any questions for Glenda from anyone?
I just want to make a comment. Thank you so much for this presentation, and I see that you have been active in Cardston this past year, and I honestly believe that the support of council is there for your operation, and what you are asking for is in the budget.
Could you hear that okay, Glenda?
Yes, I
Okay,
did.
good. Okay.
So thank you.
Yeah. Anything else? Okay, it looks like it was a thorough presentation without any questions, Glenda. I'm going to switch back so you can see me talking to you. So we will discuss this a little bit further, and I'll touch base with you in the next little while.
Thank you so much. I appreciate all your time. I look forward to seeing your council again in person, and look forward to other future opportunities to continue to keep you very well informed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
See you. Bye.
See you.
So, looking for our second delegation there.
No, just flip that switch for me. No, I think we'll move on.
So we'll go to 6A, bylaw policy, intermunicipal development plan, notice of hearings. It's basically an information item, so you know that on 23rd of March, we're having an open house so that the public can come if they have any concerns. Jeff, do you have any comments?
I was talking with Murray today. We're looking to have an ICF committee meeting with both committees on March 17th. I'll get the time and everything confirmed. That's the day after the feedback deadline is for anyone who has comments for respective councils. So I have shared with them that we want to discuss about a little bit more around off-gassing and smell coming from development in the perimeter. And then so we've agreed, let's get the community feedback, then we'll meet as ICF committees and work towards some resolutions there before any second reading.
I think it's our 17th of March.
Yeah, our 17th of March, probably be at the county. I don't have that totally hammered down, but we agreed we would start to get an agenda together, and then I'll contact the three of you to confirm everything.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Move on to 7, other business, 7A, golf course update. And you've all had a chance to review the engineering proposal regarding slippage on hole 16. Unless you have questions for Jeff regarding that, I think as far as the actual contractual obligations, we're covering that in closed session.
Correct. I redacted the amounts as you saw.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Jeff, it's an interesting report regarding the breakage of those sensors. What I don't understand is what was part of the original contract? Were there to monitor those sensors year after year? Because from the report, it appeared that, well, they broke, but we don't really know when. And so I thought that year by year, they were to give us a little bit of a sense of what was happening. So we faltered there, really. Also, as a town, it seems to me, from not asking them what was going on, right?
Yeah, and it's a good point, Mayor. The inclinometers that went in 2014 were monitored for, I believe, a little over a year. That was right after we had a real flood event in 2014. That's when we saw some significant sloughing of the hill, particularly on hole number 17 and the cart path on 16. And so there was monitoring for a time. As we got talking with Tetra Tech again, the discussion was, well, let's go see if those still hold if they're still intact. And they were not. So what I didn't know though, and what I was trying to decipher was I was asking Mark from Tetra Tech, does that mean the hill moved 3 feet?
Right.
Or
exactly.
3 inches?
And I said no.
And the answer is it's on the lower side. So those things will break off after just a few inches.
Except we don't know if it happened this year,
Correct.
last year, or the year before.
Correct.
We know it didn't happen in the first year, that much we know.
That's right.
But afterwards, we somehow lost contact with that company to give us an overview of what was happening on the hill.
That's correct.
Yeah,
Councilor
I
Martin.
think we need to do
When I read this,
better.
there was a lot of red flags that come up in my mind. I'm thinking, well, they installed them, they knew they broke. Why weren't they taking a look at them every year? When they weren't getting readings, why didn't they just step up to the plate and check it out and find out what was going on? Because I'm thinking after 7 years, we're getting this report. It didn't make sense to me because they haven't been monitoring for 6 years. Basically, if you're saying they got a year or a year and a half out of it, and they broke, and then they're just admitting it now, I'm thinking, whoa, this is different.
If I can speak to that, Councillor Selk. I don't interpret it the same way, Councillor. So when, I vaguely recall the 2014, again, some time has passed. The contract with them at the time was just to look at that year when we were having that extensive slippage. So the initial contract in 2014, they did boreholes around the course as well. So they took, what do they call them? There's a name of what they call the borehole, and they can look at the breakdown and all that. So that was done as part of the contract in 2014, and the inclinometers were to look and see if we were going to get this aggressive movement that we saw in the spring of 2014 over the course of the year. So it wasn't, I wouldn't agree that EVA simply abandoned the project. They fulfilled the scope of the project. We have full reporting on that. We have the geotechnical reports and everything they did over the course of the 2014 year. That was the scope of the project in 2014. When when I called Mark, Brandon and I called Mark a few months ago now, we've been talking about this. The discussion was, if those original bores still hold any value, let's investigate. So, for example, had they not sheared off, it would have told us that that thing hadn't moved more than a couple of inches since 2014. Now, it would have been more valuable to have really frequent testing of those inclinometers over the whole 7 years. You would have known precisely when it happened, and if it was one event or a series of many events. But similar to what you see in this proposal, they're only proposing to read those inclinometers over a year. Because Mark's position, now Mark Savern was the person who did them originally, that simply visually on the surface, there has not been much movement since 2014. That's his observation of it, and they took a lot of pictures and they did a lot of stuff at the time. So their observation is there has not been much movement. We just had a really extreme event in that year, and that caused a lot of the issues. So this is the challenge we have with that hill. I think Mark calls it in the report metastable. They consider it to be metastable, meaning it's likely moved millimeters over the course of the 7 years, is really all it's moved. But if we have another significant event, it'll go a meter.
Yeah.
You know, this is the challenge with it, is when we lubricate that layer between the clay and the bedrock, and you saw with the inclinometers, it was at like 8 meters deep on the one and 11 meters deep on the other, that's about where they sheared. So it's not on the extreme surface, you know, it's down there a ways. So when Brandon and I talked to him, we talked about potentially looking at putting in new inclinometers and monitoring them at 1, 3, 6, 9, and 12 months. It gives us a full seasonal cycle. And then the other thing, which isn't in their proposal because Brandon and Mark were talking about doing it, is Brandon would essentially go put in, for lack of something we're familiar with, property pins all over that hole. And he would locate them with his GPS, and then he would monitor those all year to see if there's surficial movement. So things only 1 to 3 feet deep. And we just do that by pins that we located throughout hole 16 and 17. So that was part of that discussion as to how we proceed to decide what in the world to do. I will tell you, talking to Mark, let's call it a little more off the record, there isn't a clear recommendation to say, you know, you should move the hole to the bottom and you're going to be up in the clear, or you should make some cosmetic fixes to 16. I'll tell you where I kind of sit with this, talking to Mark, is that we remove the underground irrigation from hole 16. We put it above ground, uphill of the hole, because where we run into problems is every time the ground shifts, it breaks the irrigation system. So we know we can fix the big ones, but there might be 6 little ones constantly running under there. So Mark and I were discussing, you could put an overland pipe above the hole and shoot over, fix your contours, do some cosmetic, and if we have to do that at $30,000 a touch every 5 to 7 years, is that a better resolve than spending $300,000 and hoping nothing goes wrong at the bottom of the hill? So that's the debate we're having, right? That we may be making the $30,000 touches at the bottom of the hill every few years too. We don't, this is a hill and it's gonna move and it's gonna do strange and funny things on us. So there isn't a recommendation, and they're saying this is precisely what the town should do without risk. There isn't a no risk option here.
So, Jeff, I think if you talk to the Golf Association, they like that hole the way it is. Am I correct in that assumption?
Yeah, I think it is a very popular hole. Right now with the slope, it's a frustrating one.
Oh, yeah.
But the difficulty of it and the setup of it is quite popular, yes.
Right, so I think we would try to maintain it as long as we can, simply because golfers like it. Yeah.
Thank you. So I really think the idea of having overhead watering is definitely better than an underground watering. I know what happened when you have one line that is broken and the flood you can have pretty rapidly. It's pretty nasty. I had in my house. Not good. So I really think if we could invest into looking at that idea of an overhead watering is definitely, in my opinion, a way to eliminate the saturation of the clay layer.
Another question, Jeff. I'm assuming that Miles and his crew can probably do those fixes in-house and do it themselves.
Yeah, I need to meet with, well, I'll have Paul meet with Miles now. The assumption is yes, we can probably deal with a lot of that shaping, fixing up the cart path, changing the irrigation. One of the challenges with the irrigation is on a golf course like that is there's so much of an electrical component too.
Yeah.
So we have to be able to get that moved. It's not just let's lay out a piece of 1.5 pipe and throw some sprinklers in it, but, so we gotta move the electrical components and do those things too. But yes, I don't see us needing to externally contract that out. That's my feeling on it. One thing I want to talk to you about in the closed session is, we'll talk about the value of the contract. The reason, by the way, that it's not in here is we haven't agreed to the contract, first of all. And if we choose to go some different things or amend it, and it involves different parties, I don't want their number disclosed. But it gives us an idea of what we'd be looking to spend on something, what we need to have some discussion on. We may need to bring in Miles. Is that money well spent if we just want to look at a cosmetic fix to the current hole anyway? Right, so we can be fairly sure that since 2014, it has not moved much, at least on the surface. It's been metastable. So maybe we want to say, instead of spending X dollars on this, maybe that's the same amount it would take to change over the whole irrigation, for example. And we hope that we can mitigate future issues. So we'll have a little more of that discussion later on in the evening. But it's just something to consider of how we approach this darn hole in that hill.
Good. Any other questions for Jeff on that? If not, we'll
It's
move on
going
to
saga.
Yeah,
7B, dog park planning update. Jeff,
sure.
back to you.
I want to talk actually, if I could, about 7B and C somewhat together, if I can. So a couple of things since the delegation, Mrs. Henniger and Mr. Ronald were here. Give me just a second, it might get timed out on me, of course. We've been looking at trying to find the right balance with that location for fencing, for space, for utilizing access for the pool, for our maintenance purposes. We had some concerns from AHS initially about the proximity of the pool. I got a response 5 minutes before the council meeting. I'll share it with you here. There is some feeling that, there's a definitive position from AHS that we can mitigate that issue. So let me, sorry Councillor Selk that you get to turn around again, but can you grab the light for me, JD? Yeah. So the most current option, and let me see if I got a laser here. I'll use my mouse. The most current option right now, oh great, and then I made a point here now, is this, where we've looked at this area of the park a little more holistically than just a dog park. And the reason why is the item on 7C, the Canada Healthy Communities Initiative grant. So the feds came out with this grant that is looking to enhance the use of public spaces, mostly outdoor, for increased accessibility for pandemic times. Now, the ominous side of that is they expect more pandemic times, which is just infuriating. But the positive side is they put out some funding to help support increasing the use and access to your public spaces. So let's just talk about the dog park for a minute, and then I want to talk about the broader concept that we're working on an application for. We haven't had a chance to present this to you prior because it kind of came to us recently, and the deadline is it the 9th, JD? The 9th of March. So currently the dog park, the perimeter this is obviously the cement pad. I'll explain this big black box in a minute. But this would be the fencing down here, and then we follow the existing fencing that exists between the town and the school division lot there.
There's no fencing, it's curbing.
Oh, it's curbing, sorry, thank you. Then down to the corner, back up to the top. It's 1.15 acres. One of the original concerns that came from my staff and from AHS was the proximity of the dog park to the pool, and if we ran the risk of fecal matter getting in the pool in the summer due to the heavy winds that we get, the prevailing winds. And so we proposed to AHS that if this all happens, you'll remember in the original drawing, the fence for the dog park was immediately sharing the fence of the pool. So we proposed a setback here. This is 60 feet back from the fence, and then jogs up, and this is 25 feet back. And the proposal to AHS was if we put a fabric along the north side of the dog park fence, and we put privacy slats in the south part of the pool fence, which we've been wanting to do anyway, to cut the wind down into the pool, would they be comfortable that that would mitigate some of the risk? So I'm just pulling up my phone here at 4:45. This is from Robert Rippon at AHS. Given the distance, the fencing fabric, the privacy slats, the slope of the land, we would not foresee the dog park creating a public health nuisance. AHS would suggest posted bylaw regarding picking up after your dog and ensuring the pool is posted with no dogs allowed signage. So that's the position of AHS as of 4:45. I haven't discussed it with my staff yet, but that just came in. So that is currently the most recent iteration of the dog park. So I just wanted to give you a bit of an update there. One thing that this design does is it increases the cost of fencing because we're not sharing the fence with the town on the north side. So they've got to come up with the cost for the fencing on the north side. We also expanded the fencing to border the curb on the east side just to maximize square footage. So yes, there's my quick update on the dog park, if there's any questions about that.
Jeff, can I ask you a question? Can you tell me why, where you have the cement pad and you have that setback that you created, why could it not go right through, straight through, rather than create that?
Yep. Yeah, the intent there was simply to try and maximize space. And when we talked to the folks from the dog park, and I hope you can see my cursor here, so this little area where we tried to maximize the space, they were looking down the road and saying, down the road they could also fence this whole jog and it could be a small dog area.
Yeah.
You know, where your tiny dogs, your little lap dogs wouldn't be at risk of being with the other ones. So yes, that jog is there intentionally, Mayor, to try and maximize some space for the future small dog area.
I just was trying to understand.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you.
So if there's no other dog park questions, I'll transition to the next one, Mr. Chair, if that's okay? Okay. So we received notice of the Canadian Healthy Communities Initiatives grant. I put the grant guidelines in your package, if you had a chance to look at those. Now this is a bit of a long shot, I'm going to admit. It's $31 million, which is a substantial amount of money, but that's spread from coast to coast in our good country. And so that spreads out pretty quick. But we thought, we've been talking about a number of things down in the Creek Valley that if we're trying to enhance public spaces, we think we have a couple of projects currently on the radar that this could cover. So I wanted to give you a bit of a bigger, broader picture of what this application would entail, and I'll use this picture to illustrate some of that. The black box that you see up at the top where the asphalt is would be a basketball street hockey court. So we could implement it in order to get better setback for the dog park. We could put that in there. We have security cameras that we can run from the pool. There's already electricity for lighting there because the former tennis courts were lit up. If you look across the road, those blue lines are all parking stalls. Now you might be asking yourself, how are we parking over the batting cage? In the grant would be money to replace the batting cage and create parking there. The batting cage would move where the 4160 transformer is, the old Powerhouse Hill transformer. That's being decommissioned this year. And so we could potentially build that into the hill. Now this is all contingent on the grant, obviously. And so we're trying to maximize some of those stalls. Now if you go to the spray park, you remember the Rotary was going to work with us to get a new pavilion in there. We've put the cost of the pavilion construction and the structure in this grant as well to go in there to get a new pavilion, to get that replaced. The Rotary Club has sent us a letter of support that they would still be a participant in that project that helps support the grant. Now, if you go east of this to the old Tourist Information Center Park, you'll remember we've got a monument coming in commemoration of residential school survivors and the Baker Massacre. Bear Creek Massacre, sorry, I think is the more appropriate name. So we've got a spot for that monument. We've also applied in the grant to build out around that to have benches, landscaping, a small gazebo, those types of things to develop that whole park area. There's a cultural component to the grant that this fits very well. So there's a cultural interpretation component of the grant. So we think that will cover it quite well. And then one of the bigger pieces of this, and this is Jeff's attempt at trying to map things, so be kind. If I open the right thing, it'll even be better. We're also putting in the grant, what you're looking at is 9th Avenue, between Main Street and 7th. That's the solid yellow line. Within this grant, we're endeavoring to get costs to put in a walking path all the way up and down 9th, which would connect the nature trail to sidewalks on 7th and sidewalks on Main.
That's a great idea.
We've had to inquire from Alberta Transportation about right-of-ways, so we're working through that. The dotted lines are potential alternative pathways to weave traffic back into residential areas through the creek valley. So for example, if we can't go out on the highway on the west of the creek, perhaps we can take the trail up that hill around and come back out on, I guess that would be 5th west. And we also have some opportunity on the east side of the creek to weave the trail over the old irrigation canal and into residential areas to try and create more interconnectedness with the trail system.
I like that idea.
So these are just some things we're trying to get within the grant to see if that can get funded. It's obviously contingent on that funding coming through, but we thought that would be. I have a personal concern with 9th Avenue and the amount of foot traffic it forces out onto the street. I shared a story with Councillor Selk. I came over the hill one icy morning a week ago. I get over the hill and good old Mr. Al Cameron's on his run coming towards traffic. And if I would have tapped the brakes going down that hill into that creek valley, I would have been sideways for sure. And thankfully there was no traffic coming the other way.
Yeah.
You know, so thank heavens I didn't have oncoming traffic. I was able to get over, but people are trying to be safe there. And especially if you would have gone up that hill about a half an hour ago heading west, you wouldn't have been able to see if anyone was walking up that road very well for the sunset. So I think we need to look at getting people off of that road and onto a safer location. We thought this might be an opportunity to build a shale pathway connecting the east and west.
Jeff, thank you for that. I really used to walk there, and it's very dangerous, so if you can do better, that's great. There is something that I want to kind of bring back, something that Councillor Baum this summer was frustrated with regarding the spray park, and youth who use their skateboard to kind of enjoy life alone. So I was wondering, is there in that whole rendition a place where we could have even a minimal amount of something in a well-lit area where they could kind of play with their skateboard without being tempted to go on that new structure and damage it?
We can look at, so let me put this back to you as a group. Yes would be the short answer. I'd have to look at the grant guidelines to make sure it's okay. We think with that trail system, we're going to max out the grant allocation by doing that. Now, the question is, with skate parks right now, and Jill, you've looked into this a little more than I have, but I think even a modest skate park is about 150 grand anymore. I might be a little low. You know, and that's just a pretty modest cement in-ground skate park. And so we would simply max out the grant just on that.
Yeah.
I'm not opposed to your idea, by the way. It would just be, is there an appetite to shift maybe, this was just administration's priority on these types of things, because it fit very distinct components of the grant. So pathway systems, cultural interpretation, pavilions and gazebos, those were all explicitly mentioned in the grant application. So we're just trying to make what we can that fits.
Councillor Brown, Councillor Work.
I love that. I love it all. I think it's fantastic. I just quickly pulled our rec master plan that the Parks and Rec board did, because you'd asked us to come up with a list of, and we did, looks like 10. And so, I mean, the clubhouse, the civic center, museum, irrigation, guess it could be used for that, guess it could be used for ice arena, compressor. I'm just running through them, reunion center, playground.
Potentially reunion center playground. Yeah, it could.
Dog park, which is on there.
Yeah.
Pathway system is on there. So you are hitting some of these. I just wanted to, just because I represent them, I wanted to make sure that we pay attention to those things, but
Yeah, when we looked at it, we were saying, what's kind of on the radar?
Right.
That would fit.
Right. And sorry, how much money, if I can, how much money did you say we would have the opportunity?
It's a maximum of $250 per application, but again, with 31 million spread over the whole country.
Of course.
My guess is we need to be scalable.
Okay.
Let's put it that way.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, just, back in the Marion days, there was a proposal for a path along Ninth Avenue there behind the houses, and there was some NIMBY complaints about it, so we need to be aware of that if we're gonna do that, but the neighbors didn't want the path going behind their fences.
I can speak, she assigned me.
I remember
public
that.
consultation council.
I
So
remember that time.
I'm very much aware, I've thought about that, we've talked about it. If the grant, that's why we had some alternative pathways too. If the grant goes through, then I think we would immediately commence some consultation with those folks.
I'd rather have the neighbors complain than somebody get hit on the road, so that's my feeling on it.
And one of the concerns of the day was, well, I should be careful here. I didn't find the concerns as expedient as the residents did back in that year, but if we do something like a continuation of the shale pathway that Gordon did, it's not something like you can't ride a skateboard down the path, you can't take your scooter down it, those kinds of things. I mean, it would be for walking and potentially a mountain bike of some sort. There was concern more about losing access to their backyards, which they don't have, by the way, by right, but they have it by convenience. It's there and accessible, no question. And so we want to design it that you could still, if you needed to get in your backyard and you needed to drive over it, then you could do that. You know, that it wouldn't be a barrier to access to the backyard, but their backyards end on a road right of way. It's not a laneway, it's not an alley, it's a transportation right of way.
Slopes off pretty fast.
Yeah, it does, yeah. So I just wanted to give you a tip, so anyone around the table who says, no, don't spend your time on it, tell us. But we're trying to get some things in order for the March 9th deadline.
Great ideas.
Yeah, good ideas. I think everyone says, go for it.
All right. We will, Katie and Jill will continue on.
As expeditiously as possible.
Yeah, okay.
With respect to the dog park plan, does anybody else here think we're giving up a lot of real estate, 1.15 acres for a dog park?
My question is, what else would you do with it?
What else do you do with it? Well, I think that part of that is still used for picnicking purposes with people who are not able to get into the picnic area or by that playground or that splash park.
My suggestion on that would be to increase the number of tables over by the playground. That's what I would do.
So everyone's comfortable with giving up 1.15 acres by the creek for a dog park?
I still have concerns, but I mean, I could live with it, but I still prefer the Agrodome area. And I know people were saying, well, I don't want to drive my big dog up there, but you know what? Edmonton, Calgary, Red Deer, all those places, you got to put your dog in your car, you got to go and drive and get into those dog parks. My kids up in Edmonton are driving 20 minutes out of town to take their dogs to a place, you know, so I think sometimes we get a little bit on the spoiled side, you know, because we are a small community. but it's not very far to go, and that property's already up there, the fence is up there. And I got thinking more, I drove by there, I drive up there 2 or 3 times a week, because I go and check on our family land out there, south of the Agrodome. And I see an area where the buffalo paddock used to be. And they hardly ever use that area, ever. I haven't seen a horse out there in years. But I see that fence, that narrow strip there, and I see on the other side of the fence a possibility for an extension to make a bigger dog park and have a perfect area there for smaller dogs away from the larger dogs. And that property is there, and then this property downtown is still there, can be used for more recreational facilities in the future. And I don't have a lot of sympathy for people who are worried about taking their dogs up, in their vehicles. I really don't, because I have experience with my own family. They do it, and they don't complain about it. They just do it.
So
That's their ability. That's what they have to do.
just a comment too is that if I take my grandkids down to the splash park or to the playground, I don't want to hear a bunch of yapping dogs.
Mm-hmm.
And if I take my grandkids to the swimming pool, I don't want to hear a bunch of yapping dogs.
So, I understand what is being said around the table, and I reflect on those two. My first concern was a health hazard that possibly was there, so I appreciate having received some direction from just regarding the noise. The noise, I remember Debbie saying when she did a presentation, is happy barking. Well, barking is barking, really happy or not, is still barking. And I'm wondering if there would be a hindrance for people using the pool when they want to hear voices of children and all that, and not the clouding noise of dogs in that area. So I personally thought that the Agrodome was possibly, when Councillor Selk presented that, as I don't know the area well enough, so I would need to have a look at what it looks like. Really honestly, in fairness, I haven't looked at that other, the present proposal either, so I think we should take a physical look at those areas before we make a final decision. I think that definitely with the fence and all that, there is tremendous potential there, but I'm wondering if the notion of being near the town is really what we should contemplate when in Lethbridge is not in the center of the town either. People have to go to that place driving.
That's brown.
Correct me if I'm wrong, it was my understanding, Jeff, this is a question for you, that council already approved the site next to the pool. Was it not approved?
No, in principle.
Okay.
And it wasn't the way it's mapped out there.
Okay, so just if I can answer a couple of questions, being a non-dog owner that I am. So I was in Calgary last week, and last Tuesday actually, and I was right downtown in Kensington, and I happened upon a dog park. I've been to one before, but this was a walkabout because I wanted to get the feel of an active dog park. And this had houses all the way around it, and it had a 4-foot fence even. It wasn't even the tall fence that Debbie and her group were looking at. And it was clean, it was next to residential, it had a few dogs in it at a time. And I actually asked a couple of people, because my friend was there, and I asked a couple of people that had their dogs there, and they said, people are under the misunderstanding that when you have a dog park, you have 100 dogs all at once. That's not how a dog park works. They said they trickle in throughout the whole day. John's not going to take his dog while he's at work. He's going to go after work, right? I'm going to go during the day because I work in the evening or whatever it is. So that to me, I didn't realize. I thought more so 5 o'clock you're gonna have 50 dogs there. They said that's not the case. The other thing, as far as the dog park group, they did look up at the Agrodome because Jill had brought it up. It had been brought up at the Agrodome. Jill and Jeff scoped through all these different areas, and it's my understanding, Jill, correct me if I'm wrong, that the other areas, the fear was, no, the reality was people are taking their dogs off leash and running them on the trails. And I can attest to that because I'm down there every other day, and they're not on leash. And so the hope was that if we had an area within the town limits, that they would use that and then they would leash them. And so that being a central area close to the pool, it's not in anybody's backyard, which they were angry about. When Jill and myself and Debbie and Kate Romerell walked it, there was nothing but garbage that had blown in trees. The town was pushing their snow up into those areas. We weren't, I understand, Councillor Selk, you're saying it's prime real estate because it is. It's right next to the river. I respect that. But it isn't being used for anything else. And it is a great area to have the dogs because we don't have residential people angry that it's in their backyard. And it seemed like we were hitting all of the check boxes that between council, administration, and the dog park people had requested. Is that correct, Jill? I mean, you've been with me the whole way, so that's my understanding. So anyway, that's my thoughts.
Really short here. One concern about the Agrodome is that they'll be walking their dogs at night. That's going to be an issue probably. A lot of people will walk them out there on trails. On the plus side, for, as Councillor Barnes mentioned, the old buffalo paddock is already fenced on. If it comes to a sharp corner and it goes this way, all you have to do is run one fence across that way and be done. It'd be a lot cheaper. Those are just two things that are going on.
With respect to this location, again, if it was shrunk significantly, so that we're not giving up that much real estate, I could entertain it, but otherwise I think the Agrodome is still a good spot to go.
Is it? If you were to shrink it, where would you shrink it to, if we were to bring the picture back?
One of the things we said is that we were going to run a straight line down and keep the parking lot that's there, which we didn't do. That's what we talked about in our previous iteration of this.
Well, thank you, just a minute. Sorry guys, I shut everything down here. There is food here if you want to do that.
Do we want to take a recess first?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll take a motion to recess. Mayor?
Motion to recess for 15 minutes.
All in favor?
Thank you, Jill.
Yes.
Councillor, where would you like to see the lines at?
No,
You said you're not,
bring that up for you.
you said you're not concerned with that spot, you just think it's too much space?
I mean, obviously, if I had my preferred location, it would be closer to the ag ground, but if we're not going to entertain that at all, then I think we need to reduce the amount of real estate we're giving away.
I think that across the top, if you just took off where the proposed small dog park is and just take that line across there,
So at the foot of the cement path
right?
across.
And then if you wanted to have a small dog park at either one of those corners by the
Either here or there.
The triangle there.
that would be far enough away from the pool and it wouldn't, there would still be parking there. And I don't know, I think personally, I think it's a good space. I know it's a lot of space, but I think it would work for most of the community. I know that there's gonna be some people that aren't happy with that. Most people will be. We put it over somewhere else. Somebody else could be mad about this or that. I think it's a good space and it would be utilized and that's just my opinion.
Councillor Selk, you were thinking of getting the line from the top of the pool right straight down, which would reduce it by about half, wouldn't it?
I guess my thought was this line on the most western edge of the basketball. So we go down to here.
Okay.
If you move the line.
Go
edge
to
of
the other
cement all
end,
way
the
across.
other corner.
Here you mean, Councillor?
No, on the pad, at the end,
The end of the cement.
Oh, yeah.
Go back down to.
yeah, here. And straight down. Can you bring your arrow down?
Like this?
Yeah.
And then if you take from this edge here and down and cut out a piece for parking. Then you could have your small dog park either in this corner or that triangle.
Forgive my screen changing around. I want to look at something here really quick if I still have it. Oh, I cleaned up my desktop. I had the previous one on here. Where did I just have it? Oh, yeah. Shoot, no, I'd have to go digging. I had the one from the last meeting, and I know we had significantly larger square footage at the last meeting. It was almost an acre and a half because we were bordering the north. We went all the way to the pool. So cutting that out knocked it down to about 1.15. And then the hope is that a lot of the traffic would actually be back here, the driving traffic, I should say. So that's the design hope. Whether it occurs is another story. But there'd be some parking and gates and parking lot there.
The question I have is with the Healthy Communities Initiative, do you want to make a firm decision on this tonight? Or?
Well, we can submit to them any draft of it, and then we can still develop.
So even at that, if we were to look at the end of the cement path and go all the way across, is there, I don't know how big that little piece is next to it. It's still a very large amount of space. I know they wanted it fairly large. But is that something that can be called back? That's a question.
If I could ask you, if we come across here, which
Yeah.
we can, what's the use of this space?
Well, that's what I'm questioning myself.
Okay.
What could be the use for the future if we wanted to be more recreation focused? Is there something there that can be reserved for future use? I mean, I know the money is limited, now.
It's just an odd location, right, from an access point of view and a.
But is there good lighting there? I don't even know if there is. Probably not.
Well, even if we use it as a dog park now, if you found something you want to put in there later, it's just a fence you have to move.
But I just was thinking, if in time, if there was proper lighting, proper, you know, anything to do with a skate park has to have plenty of open space around so people can see what's going on. Because the minute it's hidden, it's no good. It's dangerous, it's not safe. I'm just wondering. I mean, the skating park in the past ended up having a lot of problems where it was located and the activities that were done there. I mean, maybe we need to try to understand who supports this and try to see if we can come to a decision. I mean, those people want to also know what's going to happen. So, is there anybody that could entertain slicing a chunk out for future recreational use? That's essentially the question.
All right, what's the feeling around the table? We'll start with Councillor Court, what do you want?
I don't mind in this location, I don't mind adjusting it to be smaller as well. Again, I'm not quite sure what we'd use the extra space for, but
Future considerations. Councillor Brown?
I support this area.
Just the way it is?
I support this area, and as I made the motion last time with having administration, if you want to move a fence over, do that, I support that within reason.
Good. Councillor Bengry?
I support reducing it in size, and the reason why is because I look at the lawn area that we don't have around the swimming pool. And if we wanted to landscape that area and make a wonderful place for families to gather also, you know, and give us a little bit more lawn space.
Good. Councillor Barnes?
Like I said, I mean, I like this area, but I prefer the agri-dome area, personally.
Like this, or do you want it scaled down?
I'd like to see it come down a little bit. I still haven't figured out why we can't take that corner out here, this, down the bottom here, why we can't use that corner. It says service gate there, behind the parking lot. Is there a reason why we couldn't use that for a small dog area?
So we spoke with the school division about it. They keep it up and irrigate it.
Say that again?
The school division keeps it up and irrigates it. There is a curbing barrier there currently. At the end of the day, if we simply want to take it, we can.
Yeah,
We didn't need to. We didn't, with this design, that the dog park group was happy with not needing that excessive space. It's, I'll let you talk through it.
I mean, there's plenty of options for a small dog park in triangle pieces there, so.
Yeah.
Councillor Drew?
Yeah, I think this area is great, and I'm glad that AHS has come and approved the changes that we have with the mesh and all that kind of stuff. If we want to dig it up a little bit, that's fine too. But I think it's good as well.
So in this location, but you'd be agreeable to shrinking it
If we need to, yeah,
there, what you got?
within reason.
For myself, too, AHS decision really is a relief for me. But I really feel that we should shrink the space. I think we need to kind of go back on the drawing board a little bit with the space and give ourselves a chance for future possibilities.
Good. I think we're done with this. All right. Can we move on?
Please.
Please. The next item, 7D. I asked Jeff to put this on there because I read this communique from FCM. And I found it intriguing because there's new federal funding for rural and remote transportation. And I highlighted all that, like it's a permanent public transit fund, dedicated funding for rural and regional transportation needs. The reason I asked them to put it on there is I wanted to see what the appetite was of council to have administration apply or explore us getting a grant so that we could possibly look at creating some sort of a shuttle service from Cardston to Lethbridge or Cardston to McGrath to Lethbridge or whatever that may be. What can I say? I still haven't given up on the Salt Lake City Express dream, so we're going to go in a different direction.
Councillor Selk, I don't know if it was a former council, they were looking a little bit at the transportation too. And a little bit of the pushback that we had with the idea of having people going to Lethbridge and not all that was that we were then supporting the idea of people not shopping local. And that was an interesting pushback. But the reality of things is that people do like occasionally to go and venture outside of town, even if it is to go see a movie or if it is to go have a chance to meet friends in restaurants up there or whatever, or go in malls. So the pushback was there then, and the pushback was we should encourage shopping local rather than encourage people to go out of town. So that's just what I wanted to tell you from the past, because we had explored that idea and didn't resonate very well. But I like that.
My motivation behind this was I was talking with one or two residents of the Chinook, and their comment was, I would really like to get out of town for the day. I don't want to have to rely on somebody to give me a ride. I just want to go to Lethbridge and whatever.
Totally agree with you. I understand that.
That's good.
So I just, thinking about our handy bus service that we have in town, will we be able to tap into this?
That would be a great idea.
So right now, just so you know, we're applying for a grant that might help us to be able to get some people to Lethbridge, maybe twice a month or whatever it is, offering that kind of a service. I just kind of wonder if we could maybe funnel some of that money into our organization.
So whether this shortens your conversation or extends it, I went to try and find more details on this, and I came up short. I asked JD to do the same. What we found is, while the program is announced, there's no further information around the program. And so we've kind of got to sit tight. I can't tell you exactly what qualifies, what doesn't. I don't know those answers to your questions, Councillor Drew. So they've announced the program, but they use in terms, they haven't built it, or?
It's the design and something.
Yeah, the design of the program isn't done
That's
yet.
announced and nothing.
Yeah.
But
I guess what I'm saying is that is there an appetite around this table for us to pursue something like this, because it would give the citizens of this town an opportunity to use public transit to possibly go to Lethbridge, whether it's for shopping or whether it's just to get out of town. Mayor, you have a comment?
I would support the idea, because I really think that sometimes people want to get out of town just for a change of venue.
I want to get out of town.
Yes, and it is, it's not always an economic reason for going out of town. Sometimes it's just to change the landscape.
We'll call it mental health, how's that?
Yeah, exactly.
I support.
I support it until we get a clear understanding of what the costs are going to be afterwards. Are they going to kick us money for a fancy new van and then not support it afterwards? That's what I'd like to see, what the whole plan is all about. I have no idea, no problem with them getting something so we can go Lethbridge.
I agree.
What are they going to
That's
do
why I
afterwards?
highlighted a permanent public transit fund. Like the idea behind this, and President of RCM, the example he uses, he lives in Prince George, and there's a bunch of communities that surround St. George. And so he was hopeful that this announcement would allow a transit system to be created for all those small communities that surround Prince George,
Yeah, right.
for people who want to come in and get the services that that city allows.
That's great, but it's not gonna pay for itself. That's why we don't have Greyhound anymore. So I'd like to know what the long-term funding is all about.
I don't disagree.
Does anybody want to make a recommendation to council that administration pursue it when the program is developed?
You're only going to do that?
Okay, Councillor Court made that motion, all in favor? Good. Business arising from delegations. All right. MLA Scout, anyone has any comments, concerns, questions, thoughts?
Just a comment. Appreciated he taking time at this difficult time when his health is not 100% to come and talk with us. The only thing that I observed that he was willing to listen, and it doesn't mean that it changes anything, but his willingness to listen is really good. So that was good. I wish there was definitely a better line of communication when there is something that affects our town in a positive. We always dwell on the negative. When there is a positive, I would have loved to have known that. In the past, when the former Conservative, BC provincial Conservative was in place and something like that happened, the town got money or whatever, they always invited mayors and council to be there for the presentation. And I think there's nothing wrong with showcasing the benefit to our town. It's pretty well comment.
Good, thanks. Any other comments? All right, this is going to be a hidden show, so we're good with that one. And as Farnbin, I think it's pretty well understood that we are making that commitment like we have in the past.
It's in the approved in January budget, yeah.
Any recommendation, Jeff, or did you say?
No, it's good to go. Yeah. Yeah, it's good to go.
Just tell her that it's already there.
That's what I wanted to say.
Good. Correspondence, does anyone have any questions or concerns or thoughts from any of the correspondence you had in your packet?
I must say in the 9C, there is somebody that is really capable of making you laugh.
Bert wins for best opening paragraph, for sure.
Okay, so
Anything else?
there is something else. The Alberta Association of Police Governance, Councillor Bengry, I see you are sitting on one of the round table.
Yeah.
So thank you for doing that for us. But I also see that
There's an entrance.
there's a fee, so it's $500, but it allows right up to 8 people, six members, okay, sorry, I pushed it a little, to be involved in that. So if anyone else on council is interested to go from 7 o'clock in the morning to 5 o'clock at night.
I would like to see our policing committee take part of that.
I had gone to one of those conference. They're actually good, and I see it's the same format actually. So there is something to be learned about it. What I think is important for us to learn in the wake of that new policing governance is the policing committee that you can strike in order to have a little bit of oversight over the police in your town, even if it is not provincial police. So I think that item in particular is worth being part of.
This is one of the questions that I'll be bringing up at the roundtable discussion that I'll be presenting is the cost in municipalities. Because I'm the only one apparently on that advisory board from a small rural community. So that's one of the topics that I'll go on. with the cost.
So,
Except that your session, if you don't mind me.
3 o'clock.
Well, 3:45, yeah, it's a policing committee and advisory member discussion. Okay, so those will be the questions that you want to entertain. I think, Jeff, maybe Councillor Bengry could get the detail, the table we used to have presented to us regarding what our community is going to be dishing out as a portion of the cost of policing for our town.
Oh, the rural policing initiative? Is that the rural
Well,
policing initiative?
this year is costing us 79,000, and next year so much more, the next year so much more.
Yeah.
If we could get Councillor Bengry with those figures, it might be quite helpful.
so since this is $500 for up to 6 people, we want to just, or someone make a recommendation, and if we register and then 6 people. And I'm curious, if you have 8, how are they going to kick 2 people out virtually?
No idea.
You wanted to order.
I think how they would do it, Counselor, is when they give you your registration number, so you can go
Get
into
to Zoom.
You know,
Yeah, but you get to do it here and we can all be there.
When
They're
they
not
zoom
gonna be
around the room,
counted.
somebody jump under the table.
I'm not really here. Personally, I'd like to go to it. I'd like to watch it.
Okay, so why don't I make a recommendation for administration to register 6 members?
and we'll have it right here in the council.
Yeah. Who is interested around the table?
There you go.
4, 1, 2, 3,
It's like you got 6.
4, 5.
You got 6.
Who is the 6th one?
Oh, I assumed it was everybody but these.
No. So maybe administration, are you interested in these? No.
I'll have a good look at it.
Okay, all right. Okay, well, at least, I mean, if you get the 6th number, at least you can be able to be part of it.
Okay, there's a motion, all in favor? Good. And anything else from correspondence? If not, we'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to go into closed session.